Hi, this is David Orlofsky, and welcome to the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Whether you're watching with our friends over at Torah Anytime, or wherever you watch or listen to your podcast, as always, happy to have you along. And this episode is sponsored anonymously as a schus for the donors, good friends of the show, and they should have only simcha and nachas from their children and grandchildren, and gesund and parnosa, alle gute Sachen. Okay, so we are officially in Bein Hazmanim now. And this is time for vacation. Some people refer to it as chofesh, right? Vacation. I had a friend of mine learning in the old days in Yeshiva Mishkan Torah, which was known on the street as Split Tree. Itri, under Rabbi Elephant, was one of the major yeshivas in Eretz Yisrael, and they tend to suck up everybody, all the talent, all the people. And you can only have that many talented people in one place. So eventually a group of them broke off and started their own yeshiva, called the Mishkan Torah. It was known as Split Tree. Eventually one of them went off and started another yeshiva, which they called Split Three. But that's for another story. Anyway, he was learning, and he said it was almost Bein Hazmanim. It was the end of the Zman. And everybody was looking forward to people had tickets to Europe. People had different things they were going to do. And Rosh Shadron came to speak. This is how he describes it. He says, and he looks at us and he goes, Chofesh? Ma ze chofesh? Yehudi ein lo chofesh. Freedom? Purik ol? Yeah, there's no such a thing. No chofesh. And he pushed everyone to stay for an extra week into yeshiva. People canceled tickets. People did a whole thing. Yeah. Yehudi ein lo chofesh. So, I mean, look, you have to understand what it means. It means when we say chofesh. The Torah describes Shevet Yisachar, which represents the Shevet of learning Torah, as a strong-boned donkey who rests with the burden on his back and is able to get back up. What does that mean? That means even when we're resting, we have the burden on our back. So, chofesh, not nothing. It's not that there's no tzura, there's no davening, there's no... we have to keep it up. A yeshiva bacha once wrote the Chazon Ish. It says, Bein Hazmanim, how much do I have to learn? So the Chazon Ish says, well, Bein Hazmanim, you're not a yeshiva man now, you're on vacation, you're like a balabas. So the Rambam says that a balabas works 3 hours a day and learns 9 hours a day. So you only have to learn 9 hours. So he wrote him back, I don't learn that during the Zman. Chofesh! So when we talk about vacation, we're talking about everybody needs a chance to rest and to recharge. Sometimes you just have to. And the way the yeshivas were set up is that there's a certain amount of time built in throughout the year for us to take out that time and to recharge and to relax. I remember I had a shir once, really, really exceptional guys. And they were all bright and highly motivated, So we had a vacation for Hanukkah. So they came back. I said, so what did you do? You had a vacation. What did you do? He says, I had a chance to listen to all the Avigdor Miller tapes I had saved up, waiting for a chance to listen to them. Some people know how to have a good time. Anyway, so there's a certain amount of time that we need to be down and to be able to relax. It's also family time. Yeah. Or Sameach had an advanced kollel once upon a time called Meshach Chachma, which is all part of Or Sameach's philosophy, which is making fun of Bali Tshuva. So it wasn't bad enough that you had Or Sameach, which nobody could pronounce. Now it's Meshach Chachma. I have no question they took those names because they just wanted to make fun of Bali Tshuva. Aisha Torah decided that Torah was too hard because everyone was going Aisha Torah, so they just changed it to Aish. That was too, it was too hard for people. Anyway, that's not the real reason. I once asked Rabbi Shilla why, and he said, because Meir Simcha of Dvinsk didn't have any children. So we decided when we made the yeshiva, we would name it Or Sameach, which of course was his parish on the Rambam. And when they made this advanced kollel, so they called it Meshach Chachma based on Meir Simcha's parish on the Torah. But, you have to think sometimes. People pick names and aren't always aware of the significance of what could be the meaning of it. When Bernie Madoff was exposed for his Ponzi scheme, my brother said to me, "What do you expect from a guy whose name is Madoff? Didn't you realize it was made off with all your money?" So sometimes names, you don't realize the significance of it. I still think it's very strange that when Degel Torah started their newspaper, they called it the Yated Ne'eman, because the pasuk in the Torah says that you should always carry a Yated with you when you go out to battle among your tools, to use it to dig a hole so when you have to go to the bathroom. And so this is the Yated. I thought, anyone ever think about that, when the Chevra, was it the Chevra or the Yeshiva Boys Choir? It was one of those two, They had a song that had a pasuk that had the words Pesach Pasuach. Now, anyone who's ever learned, we're Daf Yomi, we're in Ksuvas now, anyone who's ever heard the words Pesach Pasuach know what it means, in a Gemara context. If you don't know, don't worry, just skip this part. Yeah. So they have a whole bunch of people singing Pesach Pasuach. You're like, gosh. You have to have a little sense of sensitivity, in my opinion, There was a comedian, an American comedian who was working for Americans here in Israel. It's a pretty small area. I don't know if he ever went on to become much of a success. He had a real limited audience, It's like becoming a comedian that only, works for electricians. But anyway, so he says, I could stop Aliyah right now. He says, just pass a law that every boy has to be named Dudi and every girl has to be named Osnat. Now, these are names that nobody even thinks about it, There was the street where the famous Central Hotel always was. It's Rehov, in English, Pines. But that's not the way the Israelis pronounce it. And they have no idea what they're saying. Baruch Hashem. As, you hear certain words. People don't realize what they're saying. Yeah. A bakery is a mafia. And I saw somebody in a supermarket. It was the Super Sol near the Plaza Hotel. And there was some American woman there. And someone said to him, Efa Mafia. She goes, the mafia? I don't know what the mafia is. Does the mafia here? People don't always appreciate, you hear certain words, certain ideas, what goes into it, So this is a time when we need to relax. We need to recharge, put ourselves back together. That's what this time is supposed to be used for. People who are working, obviously. If you're sitting and learning, really steiking. So I mention this because I was talking to somebody in Meshech Chochmah about the Kola. And I was asking him some questions. I was on the phone maybe 15 minutes, and he says, "I'm sorry, I have to hang up the phone." I said, "Oh, okay." He says, "My wife says I'm not allowed to spend any time with anyone except the family during this time." Because they had a very long schedule. When you learned in Meshech Chochmah, you had to put in 3 Sdarim. And so you learned at night. So the only time he really had to see his family was during Ben Zmanim. So this is an opportunity not only for us to recharge, but for us to spend time with our family. Now, if you're a yeshiva bacher, it means you come home, be able to spend time with your family. If you're in learning, it gives you a chance to spend time with the family. And in general, the summertime, people tend to take what we call vacations. I don't want to call it chofesh. Yehudi ein lo chofesh. A vacation, time to unwind, and a time to spend quality time with the family. So, I want to tell you 2 stories. Story number 1 was a friend of mine who was a Rosh Hashiva. He came from New York, and he moved his family to an out-of-town community where he did not feel that the local girls were maintaining the same standards that he wanted for his daughter. But those are the only people there, so of course that's who she associated with. Those were her friends. And every now and then she'd say, "Ta, the girls are going here," and he says, "We don't do that in our family." He says, "Ta, the girls want to do whatever it is," he goes, "We don't do that in our family." And after about 3 or 4 times, she looked at him and said, "What do we do in our family?" He told me over the story, and he said, and I realized, I don't know what we do in our family. I only know what we don't do in our family. I was talking to a girl who was in seminary, and she said to me, "I'm not happy. I'm not happy." And she says, "And I was always a good girl. I never went any place I wasn't supposed to go. I didn't do anything I wasn't supposed to do. I wasn't associating with anybody. I did everything I was supposed to do." I said, "Well, you're giving me a whole list of the things you didn't do. What did you do? Didn't you do something?" "No, because my goal was to stay out of trouble. Keep your head down." I was speaking to a fellow I know who sent his daughter to what's considered the best high school in Yerushalayim. And he says, "I'll tell you what it's like," he says to me, "this school." It says, I went to dental school. And they bring in people, basically, who are coming to the dental clinic to get work done because they can't afford any place else. And so we practice on these people. So obviously, you look for the easy case because you'll get a good mark. So you look for someone who just needs a cavity or just needs this or needs that. But you're not looking for a complicated case. Anyway, after a few months, I said, "I'm not learning how to become a dentist. I'm just trying to pass." So the next time he took the hardest case and he tried his best and he did a poor job and he got a bad mark. And the head of the program called him in and said to him, "What are you doing?" He says, "I'm trying to become a dentist." He says, "Your job here is to get good marks and graduate without anyone ever knowing who you are. That's the goal. I'm not interested in hearing any exceptional things about you." He looked at me and said, "That's the high school my daughter goes to. Just do what you're supposed to do and keep your head down." The girl says, "I'm not happy." "Of course you're not happy. You don't have anything." The Mesilas Yesharim is based on a brisa of Pinchas ben Yair, of which there are a number of versions. He has a particular version of the brisa. Torah mevia lidei Zemiros, Zemiros mevia lidei Zrizis, Zrizis mevia lidei Nikias, and it continues. And he says a number of times that the Seder is dafka. You have to follow the Seder of the Mesilas Yesharim. It's set up for a reason. So what's Zemiros? Zemiros is stopping to think before you do anything. Should I do this or not? And he calls that sur meira. Don't do anything wrong. He says, but you can't be a Jew just by not doing anything wrong. You have to do something good. And as much as the Y-ah Ribon wants to get you to do something bad, he wants to stop you from doing something good. Zrizis is doing something good. It's the asay tov. It's filling yourself with an excitement and a love for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So it's not enough to say, I'm sur meira, I didn't do anything wrong. But what did you do good? What did you do right? This is one of the big problems when we make a cheshbon and nefesh. When people make a cheshbon and nefesh, they go over all the things they did wrong, but we don't go over all the things we did right. And Rashi says every good thing you do is worth 500 times a bad thing that you do. And you don't even realize all the good things that you do because you don't pay attention to them. My father of Shalom, Polish Yid, he used to say to me, he says, my job as a parent is to tell you when you're doing something wrong. When you do something right, I expect it. So he could never say a word of praise. He just couldn't. I remember he only had a couple of months left to live, and I had started my career as a public speaker. And I said to him, Dad, I spoke over here to 200 people. I spoke over here to 300 people. I'm going to be speaking the Javits Center to 1,000 people. You know, he said to me, doesn't the Torah say you're not supposed to brag? I said, Dad, I'm doing this for you. I'm so impressed with myself, I couldn't be any more impressed. But I thought you might get some nachas. And he goes, yeah, whatever. So afterwards, he called up everybody. Yeah, David's speaking over here. He's speaking over here. He's doing but he couldn't say a good word to me. He just couldn't. You know? So we don't celebrate the good things we do. Our job is to point out when we do something wrong, and that's what people are there for. I just heard this story yesterday about Hillel Mandel. Hillel Mandel is a master mechanech, teaches mechanchim. And he was the principal of a school, and he told all of the teachers, if a kid's misbehaving and you can't handle him, send him to the principal. I'm the principal. On one condition, you have to send that kid 9 times to me to get praise. Each time you're going to throw that kid out of class and send him to the principal, you got to find 9 times when the kid's doing something right and say, go to the principal and with this note and tell him how good you're doing. An amazing idea. Because we're very good at pointing out when everyone's doing things wrong. They did a study, 90% of what parents say to kids is negative. So we don't accentuate the positive. Accentuate the positive, right? So it's something that we need to focus on. So what do we do in our family? And that is the question going into this Bein Hazmanim that I want to try to address. Ask yourself, what can I do with my kids that they're going to enjoy? Now, this is challenging. This is challenging if you have children of different ages. You know, I have 11 kids. When you have 11 kids, you know, and you have to try to entertain all of them, they come in, you know, all different types of ages, and they have all kinds of different needs, and you have to try to come up with something that's going to appeal to all of them. And you have to really try to think it out. Now, when I was in NCSY, we had this expression. If during the meal, at some point we'd have the singing and dancing, you know, we'd get everybody up to dance. The term that they used for it was called spontaneous ruach. We would tell the advisors, we're going to have spontaneous ruach in 10 minutes. Now, you have to wonder how spontaneous it is when it's planned, but you understand that that goes a whole different way when you plan it. Over the years, I've been able to take my children to America, to England, to different kind of things. But when I have a trip to America, and I've had times when I was able to take my entire family to America. Now, of course, with all the grandchildren, it's more difficult. But I was able to take the immediate family to America and pay for the airfares and pay for all of the, you know, the things that we did just by speaking. I would speak, and it was enough to cover the cost of the trip. Those was a good old days. So I would be taking my whole family to America. And I made up a itinerary beforehand. Now, okay, I'm not saying everyone's as creative as I am. You have to remember that I was in youth work for 10 years. So I was always making programming, and I was making, events and Shabbotanim and spontaneous ruach and stuff. So I had a different idea. I have a background in youth work. But, when people have something to focus on, it's a whole different thing. When I was learning Chavetz Chaim, so the Shiva asked if I would help manage the kitchen. This was in Eretz Yisrael. The entire yeshiva came to Eretz Yisrael. It was a kitchen that was used to serving 25 bachrim, and now there were 200 people. It was pandemonium. And I was brought in to try to make Seder. And when I came in, the executive director was spending most of his day there. The secretary, the yeshiva secretary, was spending most of her day there. There was a menayel hamitbach. There were 2 chefs. There were 2 assistant chefs. There were a couple of, custodial staff who were there. And then there was a whole bunch of work-study guys who were supposed to be helping out. And it was just pandemonium. No one could figure out what to do. So I realized I had a certain gift for organization. And I was able to turn everything around. Baruch Hashem. After a while, I worked myself out of a job because it was so organized. The system was so good. But one of the first things I did, because, so much is perception, I started writing up a menu. Now, I didn't really change that much, but you have to remember that when I was a kid, my parents used to take us away to resort hotels. Resort hotels, they put out a menu. And I had saved a bunch of menus over the years because I just found them so fascinating. And so I used this, and I would make up a menu every day. It changed everybody's perception of the food. Breakfast, fresh Israeli rye bread, half sun-ripened grapefruit, choice of cereals, egg du jour, whatever it was, I had it up. Then for lunch, soup du jour, this kind of thing, and I would just write up everything in such a way that you just look at it and you feel like, this is chosheve. The perception is that it's chosheve. Yeah. And that's, what Salisbury steak is? It's a hamburger. When you call it Salisbury steak, When I moved to Far Rockaway, I was on Sage Street. They had just renamed it West Lawrence. Because it sounded better than East Harlem. You understand? Perception. I remember reading once about a car company. They have a big press conference and they reveal the name of their next car. You don't see a car, you don't see anything, but they finally figured out the name. Yeah. So, you got to be careful. When Chevy came out with the Nova, which, by the way, the first car I ever bought, they had trouble selling it in South America because apparently Nova means doesn't go. They should think about that, you know what I mean? Anyway, so the perception. So I would make up a schedule. I'd say, today, Muncie Day. This is Queen's Day. This is, and I would write up the schedule with the times and what we're going to do. And I cut and pasted little pictures into it. And everybody got a picture. Everyone got a copy of the schedule. It's so exciting. If they would have just every morning say, what are we doing today? I said, I thought we would go, visit, Bobby and Queens. And I go, what are we going to do there? Well, we'll say that. I had it down. We're going to eat lunch over here. We're going to do this over here. We're going to do this over here. I had little pictures, different things. It was all planned out. It was very exciting. During Chol Hamoed, my kids know, I've been doing this for years. I make a treasure hunt. I used to make it in the building. Now I make it, around the neighborhood. Yeah. And whoever wins gets to go out for dinner. Take them out for dinner. Of course, I usually make it that one spouse is on the other side, so they get to take a spouse. So it works out. Everyone gets to go out. But, I have adult children. It's so much fun. It's so exciting. My my daughter Esther and my son-in-law Avi, they made up once. We were going away for the summer together, for a couple of days. They made a game, if you ever seen the game Apples to Apples, an Orlofsky version with a whole bunch of different words that would have to do with the family, and everybody had to match the word that you thought was, closest to it. It's just a lot of fun. Just a lot of fun. But you have to think about it beforehand. So if you want to have spontaneous ruach, you got to plan it out. If you want to have a meaningful time with your kids. So many years ago, an Avrech said to me, when we all had little kids, how do you make your children sit at the Shabbos table? I said, I don't. It's a privilege to sit at the Shabbos table. If they don't want to be there, so let them go and, play, with Kopla or whatever they had back then, But it's my job to make a Shabbos table that they want to be at. That's my job. And I would think about it beforehand. When I make a Pesach Seder, I think about it. How can I make this something people want to go to? And so when you have Ben Azmanim, I talked about this once on Chol Hamoed, what is most of Chol Hamoed spent doing? Waiting for everybody to get up, and then they have a long, breakfast, lunch, and keep making a lot of food is the next thing. And then begins the discussion, where should we go? Do you want to go here? I don't know, maybe it'll be too crowded. You want to go, yeah, it's too late already. And you keep that going up until supper, and then you have supper, and then, you go to sleep. But anyway, but when I used to plan my Pesach cleaning schedule, I also planned my Chol Hamoed trips. What are we going to do? Where are we going to do it? How are we going to do it? And people would kvetch. And I was like, that's okay. I'll take whoever wants to come. And whoever did always had a good time. And then they would come back later. My first year in youth work, I had the Etz Jacob chapter of NCSY. And I made this thing where every month, if there wasn't a regional Shabbaton, I made a chapter Shabbaton just for my kids. And I would have a Friday night oneg. We wouldn't have the meal together, Friday night oneg. Shabbos morning, we would daven together. We'd have the Suda together, and I'd have someone come and speak. And I had this set up. So like Friday night, we would always have a discussion on something in the news. And I'd bring in an outside speaker by lunch, And shal shudas we would eat with the shul, so they got to see that they were getting something for their money. There were some actual kids in the shul. And then Saturday night, I'd have some kind of fun activity, and we'd have a trip on Sunday. That's how I would set up the thing. So the first one I did, I said, we're going to do Torah game shows. So I had a match game, Torah style. I had the $10,000 mug and Dovid. I had, instead of College Bowl, Torah Bowl. Anyway, the first game, I couldn't get anybody to go. I couldn't get anyone to volunteer to participate. I had to twist some arms of some of the kids that I had some influence with at the beginning. I was just starting out to agree to be contestants. About 10 minutes into the first game, a whole bunch of kids come running up and say, I want to be in it. I said, well, you have to wait for the next game. He goes, no, but I really want to be in it. I said, I asked you. He goes, I didn't know it was going to be fun. Of course not. How could they know? I didn't have a track record yet. So it's my job to make it something that people are going to want to do. And so you have to decide beforehand, we're going to have some family time together. What are we going to do with it? So everyone could sit and play on their phones. That's always fun. Every now and then, look up at you and then go back down to the screen. So you have to really think about it. What do I want to do with this time? Do we want to have a game? Do we want to go someplace? Do we want to make a trip? How are we going to do it? Let's talk about logistics. I planned it out. The more thought you put into it beforehand, and the goal has got to be, I want them to have a good time. And let's call a spade a spade. If you're not fun, and some people are not fun, you got to get fun people. Remember, Noach Weinberg said to me, look, there's no ruach in the yeshiva. This is in Aish, 1983, I think it was. I think it was then. I'm trying to remember when it was that we had this conversation. He says, no ruach in the yeshiva, have some ruach. I said, okay, so Motzi Shabbos, make a kumsitz. Get one of the kumsitz people. I mentioned some of the people at the time. Come out with a guitar, sing some songs, put out some refreshments, And I said, and you'll sit in the front. He goes, I don't like these things. I said, but if they don't see you there and they're not going to participate, you have to be part of the fun. Otherwise, they're going to be like, well, the Shiva's not here. Why should I be here? So think about it. If you're not fun, bring in some designated fun people. When I used to staff for Shabbaton, you can't have all the same type of people. I had some people who were very good on one-on-one. Some people who were very good at giving classes. Some people were very good at speaking. Some people were just ruchdicke and you geschmacke guys. And you need all kinds of different people. Because different people appeal to different people. I had a convention, these two guys come. And they have a boom box, and they're like blasting music and interrupting everybody. And, evidently they were heavy metal people. This was in the 80s, It's like... So I had a girl who was an NCSY, and she graduated and became an advisor. And she got engaged to this kind of like, slightly out of it yeshiva guy. It was like the Chayre Epis Gerade, dort in the Anyway, I didn't know he was about tshuva. I didn't know that because he wore it so well, the look I'm talking about, the pace behind the ears, a little dandruff on the shoulder, you know what I mean? This sort of schlumpy thing, then the shirt half out, that look, So she asked if he could come to the Shabbaton, so I figured, yeah, okay, as a favor to her, Anyway, these two guys are there, and everybody's just terrified of them. And he shuffles over. He goes, what are you guys listening to? I say, the Ramones. Oh, yeah? I used to hang out with Joey. He says, what? He says, yeah, we went to school together. I know all of them. Anyway, that was it. The rest of the Shabbaton, they followed him around like puppy dogs. If he said daven, they davened. If he said wash. If he told them to grow payas, they grow payas. Whatever he told them, Joey Ramon? Who knows? Who knows what works? So you have to sit down and say beforehand, I'm going to have this time with my family. We don't just leave it to chance. Let's plan it out and make it as effective as we possibly can. And we're going to talk about some maybe fun things to do and effective programs and stuff. But again, one size doesn't fit anybody. So obviously each family is gonna have their own time. You ever go to one of those families where they just like to tell these kind of corny puns, and everyone thinks it's so funny and so clever, and and they just keep going back and forth, and you want to kill yourself? My family's not like that. My kids are outrageously funny. Hysterically funny, and also incredibly hurtful, which unfortunately they get from my wife. What can I do? Not everybody has my level of sensitivity, and or as one of my kids once said, how did you become so sarcastic? I went to sarcasm school. Really? No. No, I would never say anything like that, of course. But anyway, so each family is gonna go their own way. I was waiting online to go to the Harry Potter ride in Los Angeles with two of my kids in a summer in LA. It was somewhere between 100 and 150 degrees. I don't know exactly. Basically we were watching people melt before our eyes, Anyway, how do we pass the time? We just tell really, really outrageous jokes. It's really funny. Anyway, there was this black kid who kept following us around, a teenager, every place we went, because he just thought this is the funniest thing he ever saw in his life. We cross cultures, and that's, I'm always amazed when I go to England and people say to me, "Oh, were you successful in England?" They have a different type of sense of humor. Nope. They're just a good sense of humor like they do every place else. I always had a great time in England. They were all wonderful people. I had a terrific time. And I guess if you're of a particular type, maybe you don't go over so well over there. But I have a certain universal language. Yeah? Okay. And now the question and answer portion of our program. Anonymous asks, how come it is general practice to substitute Hashem's name when singing Shabbos Zemiros, i.e. Kah Ribon instead of Hashem's name, Ribon? It seems like this was not the original intent based on how they are written. Thanks. You're right. Ideally, it should be said with Hashem's name. The problem is that we repeat words. My wife had a very chosheve uncle who was a chazan in Toronto. Can't decline. And he came to my son's bar mitzvah here in Eretz. We came to do musaf. He says, what's the minhag here with repeating words during, davening? I said, you can do whatever you want. We don't do it here. He says, you know who matters it? This one allows it, that one. I said, I didn't tell you what to do. You asked me. What do they do over here? Over here, they don't do it. You want to do it, nobody's going to stop you. But if you ask me what they do, they don't do it. Yeah. And so, since people sing Zemiros where they repeat the words, they don't want to repeat Hashem's name. And that's why one of the classic Mizmor David, Hashem Roi Lo Echsa. So there's a lot of places where it repeats. And I heard somebody sing it without repeating any words, and he used Hashem's name. So if you can do that, but the reason that certain people, Kiddush and Havdalah, you see? So that's why, because of the repetition. Anonymous asks, any suggestions on ways to affect change and inspire a community of people to spend less? You, first of all, have to turn to the institutions. For example, when I lived in Far Rockaway, so Reb Freifeld in Shar Yoshev had some very well-to-do people who would daven in the yeshiva on Shabbos. But he had a policy. If you want to make a kiddush in the shul, then it costs whatever it was, $150. This is what you get. There's no premium, there's no prime, there's no deluxe. This is the kiddush that we make for everybody. Whether you're an avreich, whether you're a billionaire, this is the kiddush the yeshiva provides. The same thing for everybody. And it's such an amazing thing. It changes, obviously, one of the pshatim I remember hearing a long time ago in Parshas Naso is they list the korban of Yehuda, then they list the korban of Yisachar, then they list, and it's exactly the same over and over again. So I heard of Shah many years ago. It says that's because if 12 people have to bring the first time korban, no one's trying to up anybody else. No one's trying to outdo somebody and do it a little better and a little bit more. That was an unbelievable thing. Everyone said, we're going to bring the same thing. And so that's only so much that you can do from that point of view. But there is something that you can do. I remember hearing this story. Rabbi Aaron Weiner, who lived in Chicago and moved to Eretz Yisrael. So when his kids would get bar mitzvah, the rule was you couldn't keep your bar mitzvah money. He made a very simple bar mitzvah, and he would sit down with the children and decide which tzedakah they wanted to give the money away to. I heard this story. I was very impressed and surprised. I remember telling it to somebody in Chicago, and he says, yeah, a lot of people were upset at him because he made other people feel bad for keeping the money. But obviously, the best way to lower expectations is you start with yourself and you don't get caught in the game and the rat race. The problem is it's hard for your kids. And one of the reasons I moved to Israel, August will be 34 years, the end of August, is because I realized I'm never going to be able to compete in America. My kids are always going to feel like they're deprived. So I will move to Israel where everybody's not making it. So I could not make it with the best of them. So that's the best that you can do. And the more that you lead by example, the better you're going to do. Anonymous asks, some people daven for years and Hashem ignores them. Some people get everything without davening. What does that mean? Does davening work or not? Okay, Hashem never ignores you. Never ignores you. Because Baruch Hu might know that it's not right for you. Parshas V'eschanan. Moshe Rabbeinu davens 515 tefillahs to be able to be led into Eretz Yisrael, and Hashem says, don't daven one more tefillah or I'll have to let you in. Could you imagine? Kid says to the parent, I want to do this. No, I want to do this. I want to do this. I want to do that. The mother says, just stop, because if you ask me one more time, I'm going to say yes. But what HaKadosh Baruch Hu was telling Moshe Rabbeinu is, it's for your own good and the good of Klal Yisrael that you're not going in. Don't ask me again, because the power of tefillah is, as the old expression goes, be careful what you ask for, you might get it. And so if HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't give you anything, it doesn't mean he's ignoring you. Or sometimes it's not the right time. I had a good friend of mine, Joe Werfel. He married a lovely lady who was 16 years his junior. Well, unusual. But he said by the Sheva Brachas, I became frum as a teenager, and I realized that when I became frum, that's when my Bashet was born. So sometimes you have to wait for the right time. Sometimes it's a question of timing. And sometimes there are people who are of such weak belief that the HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives them what they want right away. That's what Shlomo Melech said when he put up the Beis HaMikdash. He says, if a guy asks for something, give it to him right away. If it's a Jew, if he deserves it, fine. If not, not. And that's why we say in davening, Kaveh el Hashem. If that doesn't work, Chazak v'yamez lebecha v'kaveh el Hashem. You just have to keep davening. And it could be now is not the right time. All right, one last question. Anonymous asks, where does alcohol play a role in Judaism? We know that we make Kiddush and Havdalah every week on wine, as well as get married over wine. It is a chosheve drink that is at every simcha and many Shabbos and Yom meals. Yet at the same time, we see how dangerous the effects of alcoholism can be. Any insight would be appreciated. You said it just as well as anything I could say. Alcohol is a controlled substance. Like all controlled substances, it's fine if it's being used in a controlled manner. Therefore, although the Christians turn their back on alcohol and call it the devil's brew and say there shouldn't be any alcohol and it's evil, we say, no, it can be used for Kiddush, for holiness. You can use it to uplift and to do beautiful things with Kiddushin, make a Kiddush, all of these things that go with it. Of course, too much. And I refer you to the Das Kanim in Parsha Shmini, where he brings together all of the Chazal, where he discusses all the disasters that have happened to people from too much drinking. So, does drinking have a role? Sure it does. Yosef sends barrels of fine wine to Yaakov as he's coming down to Mitzrayim. Yeah, wine can, of course, be used to be misameach, can used for chachamim, has all kinds of good purposes. But like every controlled substance, some of it is good and too much of it is bad. And so there are vitamins that are essential. You take too much, you're going to get sick. You have to have the right amount. And that's the same thing with alcohol. Does alcohol have a purpose? Sure it does. Taken to excess, it will lead to terrible things. And therefore, one has to know how to use it like any other controlled substance. Okay, that's it for this show. If you want to find out more about the Rabbi Orlofsky Show, go to my website, RabbiOrlofsky.com. You can leave a comment, you can send an email, you can sponsor an episode, and you can sign up for one of our online shiurim. We have 2 Mesil Shisham shiurim, Daf Yomi, and the Tefillah shir, which is just about to finish the first Baruch of Shemona Esrei. We're going to have a little see and Ken Hala. Got a lot more to do. And that's it for now. I'm Dovid Orlofsky, and this is the Rabbi Orlofsky Show.
It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Torah and simcha, ready to go. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Knowledge and wisdom will help you grow. Lots of fun in every episode, and we don't have to rhyme. No, we don't. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show on RabbiOrlofsky.com. Torah anytime, YouTube and more. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Torah and simcha, ready to go. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Till next time, till we meet again. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show.